Hi, this is Savannah,
And this is Brian from the Dorky Diva Show,
and you're listening to Star Wars.
the best place for below average Star Wars.
The Dorky Diva Show presents
Why is this seat so much more comfortable?
the long-awaited sequel to the adventures of the Zolan Dart audio drama.
Have you seen the captain's datapad?
Trying to work, Murph.
Piloting the Zolan Dart by himself,
You do understand the details of this particular job, correct?
I've been on plenty of jobs like this. With you!
Reldar Sias returns to a planet he thought he'd left behind for good.
Is there a reason you didn't mention I was tagging along?
Hopefully having you there will make others think twice about messing with me.
Making new friends
Oh, you must be the pilot of the Zolan Dart, yes?
I guess I am.
and reconnecting with old ones,
Reldar?
Vera?
What are you doing here?
until past grudges resurface.
I'd be minding my own business if I were you.
Well, if your business wasn't being handled right in front of my face, maybe I could mind my own business. We have to leave. Now.
Why the rush all of a sudden?
We're in trouble.
If it isn't little Reldar Sias.
Hey, Yorick. Long time no see.
Roz already knows you're here.
Oh,
Look who decided to come home.
Reldar must confront his origin,
I must admit, I never saw this as being a part of your past, Softshell.
or let it define his future.
I will get what is owed to me, no matter the cost.
because what Roz is trying to do is wrong.
Says you.
My blasters, we're going to need these. Take that, Sleemo!
Who do you think you are?
The Adventures of the Zolan Dart, Episode 2, coming soon.
Welcome to Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
I am Jason Hondoling.
And I'm Kat Rees-Yelka.
And we are back to review part 8 of the Ahsoka live-action TV series, streaming now on Disney+. It is the final episode of this season. It is called Part 8, The Jedi, the Witch and the Warlord. Obviously written by Dave Filoni, who's written every episode of the season, and is directed by Rick Famuyiwa, obviously famous for doing a lot of the Mandalorian episodes, as well as becoming an executive producer on that series. So almost one of the Lucasfilm family now. Before we sort of dive into our thoughts on the things that we've seen going on, obviously I'm just going to give a quick run through of the episode. So obviously episode 7 ends with Ahsoka, Ezra and Sabine obviously being joyously reconnected. And that is sort of the new threat for Thrawn, I suppose, is the Jedi being reunited and then coming to get him. So to confront the Jedi, Morgan Elsbeth is gifted Mother Talzin's sword by the Great Mothers, as well as some powers of darkness and shadow. While this is happening, Ezra is constructing a new lightsaber, using pieces from Hu Yang's lightsaber storage area. There's a lovely moment where he's looking for a certain bit. It's the lightsaber emitter, and it's actually very similar, if not a duplicate of the one his master, Kanan Jarrus, had. And there's a great moment where when Hu Yang realizes that Ezra's master was Caleb Dume, obviously Kanan Jarrus, he finds that piece for him. There's a great moment there. After this moment, we kind of have the nice moments for too long. TIE fighters attack the Jedi starship, and it's downed. Essentially, Ahsoka and Ezra have to jump out the ship to protect the little Naughty from being crushed by the Jedi starship. Sabine's able to get some power out of the engine to crush the TIE fighters, but then the ship is downed, which essentially leaves Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra to make their way to the Chimera, which is Thrawn's Star Destroyer, on foot or riding some beasts, and able to reach the Eye Sion. So they make their way there to attack. Thrawn sees it coming. He says, "Prepare for ground assault." He actually orders the Star Destroyer to shoot down on the surface of the planet, but they're able to get inside of the Night Sister stronghold. They're confronted by Morgan Elsbeth and the Night Troopers. After defeating the Night Troopers, the Great Mothers resurrect the Night Troopers. To get some really chilling shots here, almost like zombie stormtroopers. When this happens, Ahsoka says, "I'll deal with these. You guys get a throne." The Star Destroyer starts to take off. Sabine uses the Force to help Ezra jump to the Chimera, very similar to how Ezra and Kanan would use the Force, sort of the "I'll push you, you pull me" type of thing. Very much Master and Apprentice like. And Ezra is able to find his way onto the Chimera. And Ahsoka stays behind to help Ahsoka, and they kill Morgan Elsbeth. And the Eye of Sion sort of jumps to hyperspace, leaves Ahsoka, Sabine, and Huyang stranded on Peridea. Thrawn and the Great Mothers arrive over Dathomir, and we sort of see them looking over the cargo hold full of these, I would say, look very much like space coffins, but who knows what they're filled with. They could be filled with cargo, they could be filled with dead Night Sisters, they could be filled with dead Stormtroopers, could be filled with dead Naughty. Who knows what they're filled with? We'll find out. Ezra's obviously able to escape the Star Destroyer in a Stormtrooper disguise. He also seems to have the Jedi shuttle, similar to the ones using the Clone Wars, and the same shuttle, the Jedi shuttle that Baylan and Shin have been using at the beginning of the series. And he's able to reconnect on Home 1 with Herass and Dula and Chopper. And then we see Ahsoka, Sabine, and Huyang join the Naughty to make their new home in Peridea. And they seem to be very much watched over by not just I don't know if it's Morag or Morai, sort of the bird of the sister character from the Mortis arc, and obviously by Anakin Skywalker. And Shin, who's obviously survived, joins the bandits, while we see Baylan Skoll's guided to a mountain, which is the statue of the Mortis gods, although looks like the mountain's been destroyed a little bit as the daughter is missing. Obviously, we know the daughter died, or gave her life, shall we say, to save Ahsoka and the Clone Wars. So there is just the father and the son represented here, and a damaged bit, which we assume did have the daughter on. But that's pretty much how the episode ends. It ends sort of ties up Thrawn and Ezra getting back to our galaxy. It sort of shows us, sort of opens up the fact that Ezra and that Sabine and Ahsoka, are stuck on Peridea, and looks like that's going to be the next two adventures. We're going to get some sort of adventure, whether it's a movie, a TV show, who knows, a comic, a book, telling us how Sabine and Ahsoka sort of deal with maybe the looming threat of Baylan and trying to get this power of the Mortis gods. And on the other side of the story, we're going to have, obviously, the return of Thrawn as heir to the Empire and how that goes down. Let's just dive in. We'll go to you first, Jason. Sort of, obviously, just overall, what are your overall thoughts on this episode as not just as an episode on its own, but also as the finale part of this series of Ahsoka?
I think everything that we wanted to and expected to happen happened, but there was also some really great unexpected things thrown in there that just made me love this episode. Obviously, I think I probably felt the same as the majority of people I've spoken to, is as much as I enjoyed it and loved it, they've just left us wanting more and more of this, which is brilliant. But obviously, with the current climate, with what's been going on in the film industry, it's now a case of when are we going to get it and how's it going to go? Obviously, I think a big thing that a lot of people talked about, and the way the episode ended with Shin and Balin in particular, and with what happened sadly to Ray, it's like you sat there thinking, it's a beautiful shot. It's the last shot that we're going to see of Ray as that character. And in some ways, I hope they don't recast. I know the character could carry on quite easily, and we want to find out what he was looking for. And, if he finds it, obviously it looks like he's a lot closer to what he was aiming for. But I'm hoping maybe that side of things, just to be a little bit loyal to his portrayal of that character as maybe done in comic books or something like that, so that the story can carry on. But Ray's performance is the one, because there are a lot of actors that could take on that role. But I think he really, really did make it his own, and it was such a powerful performance that it was a tribute to everyone. And then the rest of the story, I loved the zombie troopers. The scene where Ezra and Sabine were fighting the two troopers before they got catapulted off. I just absolutely loved that. Because it reminded me of The Walking Dead, when obviously part of the helmet had been smashed and there was the zombified jaw underneath the helmet sort of snapping as if it wanted to get at Sabine. I just thought, they've really gone to town with the zombie idea here. Obviously there was a lot of magic, which I think did a lot for the whole episode. And Morgan Elsbeth's sort of final part to her story, with the Lady Townsend, that was just absolutely brilliant. And obviously the actress is famously the goddaughter of the famous martial artist Bruce Lee. And I saw someone say that when they saw her get that sword, they thought, oh, we're finally going to get to see her. And the choreography and the fight sequence there reminded me a lot of the fight sequence that we'd seen with her and Ahsoka previously in The Mandalorian. But I just really, really enjoyed it. The way she clearly is a very, very skilled martial artist. And again, she's one of the older actors in the series, but she carried herself so well and is so good in that role. It was magical. I think for me, as a character that I'd seen in The Mandalorian, I wasn't overly keen on her. Seeing her in this series, where she was a real genuine threat, I just grew to love her as one of the bad guys. And a lot of people have said, this is the Night Sisters. There could be a way back for her. But overall, the way the series has ended, obviously, again, so much went on that I just really enjoyed it. Just left me wanting more. And now, it's how is it going to be done? I've got a few ideas of how it might happen.
Yeah, I think for me, I know you spoke. We probably have different thoughts on Ray, on what they're going to do with Bane and Skull, because I feel that the whole part of Ahsoka and Sabine being where they're meant to be, because Ahsoka's happy that they're stranded there, because she says, where we're meant to be, is to stop whatever he's doing with the Mortis gods. So for me, I'd rather recast, because I don't think it takes away from anything Ray's done. Like, what Ray Stevens has done is there for us all to see. We've all talked about how awesome it is. We can always watch how awesome it is. The same as like the great sportsmen in the world, they come and go and new generations come. And I think it dishonors the story if you don't recast someone and try to use like if you just look at the rigmarole it caused with the Rise of Skywalker, where we had to use previous footage of Carrie from 2 previous movies, it didn't work. Do you know what I mean? It didn't allow you to forward anything. So I think for me, it seems like that's tied into Ahsoka's story, not just a side quest for Balin. So I think if we want the next story, the next step of Ahsoka's journey, I think we need to recast him, in my opinion. Otherwise, you just need to pretend it never happened, which would be such a waste when you get such powerful shots like that end one with him on top of the statue. Kat, what were your thoughts on, again, just the episode as a whole, and sort of on the ending of where we can go next?
I think as a finale, it was masterfully done, and Dave Filoni wrote it in such a way that there was so many references to across every generation of Star Wars that we've seen, and it had this sense of adventure, but also very much deeply rooted in the Star Wars mythos and the mythology that Dave Filoni himself has helped create throughout the Clone Wars, throughout Rebels. And a lot of people have said that Ahsoka is basically Rebels Series 5. And I think this episode in particular really felt like something from that Rebels era. There was crazy moments, there was funny moments, but it was all heart. It was all about the characters at the end of the day. And that came across so well. I definitely think my favourite part was also the part that grossed me out the most, which was those zombie Death Troopers. That makes me want a Star Wars horror story in TV or on movies even more, while still being grossed out completely by that scene. Death Troopers are scary enough without insatiable hunger. And I loved how Thrawn did escape in the end. He monologued. He had his villain monologue to distract Ahsoka and managed to get away, which felt very Thrawn. Definitely. He talked his way completely out of it. And that was a great tactic by him. No, I mean, I think the entire series has been fantastic, and that ending was so well done, and every character had their part to play. Even though we don't see Shin and Balin as much, or hardly anything, every moment for the characters in the previous episodes has come to a culmination in this episode. And yeah, I just completely loved it.
Let's sort of dive in and sort of dissect the episode. So let's stay with you, Kat. So just in more detail, sort of what were your thoughts on the opening of sort of Thrawn, sort of, you know, I wouldn't say ask the mothers to make Morgan a stronger Night Sister, but it was implied. The fact they give her the Mother Talzin blade, and while that's going on, we've got some synergy going on, as we have Ezra creating his own lightsaber on board the Jedi starship. And also, like, what were your thoughts on where maybe Ezra's blue crystal came from?
Yeah, I think Morgan Elsbeth has always been this little bit of a paradox of a character, in the sense that she is a massive supporter of Thrawn, and she implies that she's, I don't know, worked with him in the past. There's a lot of implication that she has history or respect for Thrawn, while there's never actually any proof of the two of them doing anything together. So I think this part where she's imbued with Night Sister magic is not only a coming home for Morgan, but it's like the ultimate act of faith for Thrawn. She is literally putting all her loyalty to the Night Sisters in the name of Thrawn. It's a massive step for her character to be able to do that. And I think Thrawn always has a lot of respect for the different cultures and beliefs of the galaxy, he himself being a Chiss. And there's this sort of subtle interest as he watches Morgan make this pledge. And you can also see in his head, he's figuring out how best to work it to his advantage at the same time. He knows how powerful Night Sister magic can be, and Morgan having that level up, for use of a better term, is just another sort of weapon in his arsenal, if you like. But it was very interesting to see Morgan take that, and to sort of see her be inducted as a Night Sister, because up until this point she hasn't actually looked like a traditional Night Sister. She's lacked the tattoos, and I thought they were just born like that, like the Pantorans, but it's actually a ritual that they undergo that gives them those amazing tribal tattoos. So that was really interesting to see. And the synergy between Morgan receiving the Blade of Talzin compared to Ezra building his lightsaber was really interesting, because we have this dark side blade, beautifully crafted to look like a typical Japanese sword. And we know that it's Japanese swords and Japanese fighting styles that have influenced lightsaber design and combat. So you have that beautiful synergy then with Ezra building his lightsaber. As for the blue kyber crystal, I'm assuming in all those nooks and crannies, Hu Yang just keeps some spare crystals. Padawans, even Jedi Knights, they lose their lightsabers. So I think Hu Yang is the kind of droid to always keep at least 5 spares of everything. And I think he probably had a few lightsaber crystals lying around somewhere, if you could find them. But the moment where he gives Ezra the emitter part of the lightsaber, that's a duplicate of the one Kanan had, that just felt like a beautiful full circle. And a really touching thing for Hu Yang to do. There's such a humanity and such a presence to Hu Yang, which I think is perhaps meant to suggest his age. Hu Yang is he's centuries old, and I think he's sort of absorbed humanity over that time. He's been around so many Jedi, their masters, apprentices, and I think it's given him a real insight into human behavior, much more compared to, say, droids like C-3PO, who still are quite they don't really, 3PO doesn't really get human behavior and its intricacies.
Yeah, I think if you think of Hu Yang, he's seen it. He sort of met and said goodbye to sort of so many different masters and apprentices, where it's almost that thing of the curse of like being immortal, living forever. People think it's awesome, but actually it can be quite tragic, because you have to say goodbye to everyone and they never say goodbye to you, type of thing. So I think he does understand humanity a lot, and yeah, it definitely sits with him. I think one of the things I picked up on was Mother Talzin just gets given these powers and given this blade, like the quick and easy path. As Yoda spoke about before, the dark side of the Force is quick and easy. It might get you results faster, but are they going to maintain themselves? Where here you see Ezra actually building his lightsaber, taking his time, looking for parts, has to ask for help to find the right part. So that I enjoyed that bit. Jason, what were your thoughts on both Morgan Elsbeth and Ezra getting their new weapons?
Yeah, like you say, it just goes to show the difference between the two. Seeing the way Huang sort of spoke about, first of all, he's quite fussy and frustrated by Ezra sort of rooting around everywhere. And then the more he learns as he's talking to Ezra, you see him sort of soften and realise, that Ezra's going down the right path. And then the way he then presents him with what he says was the spare that he kept in case Kanan or Caleb June ever needed the spare. So, he's he basically said it is the identical piece. So it brought us back to obviously Caleb. And it's something that I was actually really glad about this series. Is obviously Caleb's had a couple of Kanan's had a couple of mentions throughout the series, which he needed to because he was a big, big part of Rebels. But I'm glad that they didn't go down like flashback or trying to get Freddie Prinze Jr. to do anything, because I think the loss of Kanan still feels very raw in the series, and I think that just adds to, they're also sort of carrying on their mission because that's what he would have done. So I really like that they did that sort of throwback to him, without having to go down the route of bringing in flashbacks or anything like that.
Yeah, I think you bang on. I think we're able to sort of add quite a lot of emotional weight with the way they wrote the dialogue about it, without actually showing you an image of him, but they're actually made you remember what he did in the history. And I think they did a really good job of making you feel that emotional weight. So after this, obviously, we get the attack on the Jedi Starfighter, where it's almost the two TIEs come out. They're able to hit the Jedi Starfighter out of the blue. It's like a sitting duck. I love the fact the Jedi Starfighter is covering the Nutty, almost if it's protecting them. And obviously, that's the whole point. Is I think Sabine jeopardizes the ship to take out the TIEs in order to save the Nutty. I think because the Nutty are a little bit at risk here. And obviously, that's what Ezra and Ahsoka did as well, using the Force to keep the ship up above the Nutty in their little, I wouldn't say speeders, but in the Nutty's little bumper car caravans, whatever they're called. That's what I'm going to call them. That's got you, Kat. Sort of, what were your thoughts on the TIE fighter attack? And obviously, when we see the ship go down, what were your thoughts here? This little bit of sort of dread that was created, I suppose.
What's quite interesting about this TIE fighter attack is the tactics compared to some of the Imperial TIE fighter attacks we've seen in previous Star Wars shows and movies. Thrawn only sends out 2, and the pilots are really good. I mean, they're really good. Compared to sort of the TIE fighters we see chasing the Millennium Falcon, who can hardly get a hit in, these 2 are going up against Hu Yang, who clearly has a lot of experience at the controls, and Sabine, who is a great pilot. We know that. And they are still managing to get very precise shots in towards the engines. And I think that shows that in the time that Thrawn and his troops have been stuck on Peridia, they have not been lying idle. They have been practicing. They have been keeping up the drills and the training, and are now better than the Imperials that were before. Thrawn's troops were always an edge above regular Imperial troops, but these now seem to have gone a step even beyond that. So it's quite interesting watching the tactics of these TIEs. And yeah, it definitely creates a sense of dread, because the Jedi Starfighter is sort of like a mother goose or a mother hen above all these little knotty caravans, protecting them and herding them. And these TIE fighters are coming in very quickly, and you want the Nottie to be okay because they're adorable and they're innocent and they haven't done anything wrong. So
Definitely.
Everything is just, it's protect the Nottie at all costs. And Sabine's like, right, forget the ship, it's protect the Nottie. And she downs this really important piece of tech that could help them just to protect the Nottie. So it was a great moment.
We've already seen the space whales get turned into sushi, so we had to protect the Nottie, didn't we?
Well, I think the space whales got away. I don't want to picture space whale sushi. Oh no, they were fine. They all got away.
But the soy sauce for the space whale sushi would be like blue, like the hyperspace colours, wouldn't it? To dip it in.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even vegetarian, and I don't want to picture this. No, the space whales are fine. The Nottie were fine. All the animals were okay.
Yeah. To be fair, the whales did bugger off into hyperspace as soon as they started getting obliterated. I think 1 or 2 might have got turned into sushi, but most of them got away, I think, which is good. I support that. And I would never hunt a space whale, but I would eat the sushi if someone else killed it, so that's all right. Did anybody pick up on I think after this moment, there's sort of a, after this, we find out that Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka have to sort of travel on foot or or ride the wild dogs to the Night Sister fortress, I suppose. And Ezra makes a comment about sort of Thrawn found the castle, woke the Night Sisters up, and that's when things become a problem. Almost as if maybe Thrawn and Ezra had been living maybe in some sort of peace before that happened. I don't know what your thoughts were on that, Kat. We'll go to you first on just the line you made about how the fact that Thrawn found the building, woke the Night Sisters up, and then that's when things went wrong.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. It's quite an offhand comment, and I think Dave has done that deliberately. Either the script was meant to be a little ambiguous to allow for room if the story needed to change, or it's to allow creative freedom to a writer to fill in that time gap, because it's this very interesting conundrum of Ezra and Thrawn on the same Star Destroyer getting stuck on Peridia, and then there's a massive time gap before Sabine and Ahsoka arrive. I mean, the time gap must be at least 7 years. I think it's more around the 10-year mark. I think it's about a decade. And that means that Ezra was on the Chimera when it, I don't know, crashed or got into orbit. I mean, either like everybody was knocked unconscious and he sort of dashed off, or yeah, he was speaking to Thrawn and perhaps not working together, but at the end of the day, on a world you don't know, you're going to team up with somebody who could help you survive. And that comment makes it does make it sound like Ezra and Thrawn were the tentative peace. I don't know. But then they go poking around this fortress, and Thrawn sees a way for gaining power, whereas Ezra sees the influence of the dark side and the Night Sister magic. That's a very interesting, ambiguous plot point they've put into this episode. And like I said, I do wonder if it's to allow creative freedom for a writer to fill in that time frame. Is this Timothy Zahn's chance to put in another Thrawn novel, Thrawn and Ezra, or is this even a chance for the comics to have a little bit of a look into this area of the past, of Thrawn's past and of Ezra's past? Very interesting. I'm excited to see what they do just from that one line.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at the state of Thrawn's Star Destroyer, you know, there's a lot of, you can see all the patchwork that's been done to it. So you got to think if they've arrived and they're obliterated, I could almost imagine them maybe having some sort of, I wouldn't say an alliance, but maybe some sort of alliance, or at least a sort of a agreement. And then I imagine once Thrawn finds these Night Sisters and they're able to make a deal and start rebuilding these starship and rebuilding these troops, and maybe that's when it, you know, Ezra has to then start, right? No, it isn't. We have to start fighting again here. Jason, I don't know what your thoughts were on the line, and obviously on the possibilities of getting sort of the backstory filled in of, you know, I don't know how many years it is, but it's at least a decade, I think, that they've been stuck on Peridia for.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of thing that's been alluded to, that obviously everyone wants to know, and like you say, it is the perfect opportunity for something like a novel, comic book, you know, to discover what's been going on in that time. You know, we've known Thrawn and Ezra, I think there always was this mutual respect. And as we know with Thrawn, he will, you know, he shows he's always got respect for people, and for their, you know, the good that they can do. So I think it would be a good opportunity. Timothy Zahn would be perfect to sort of fill in that with another Thrawn novel. And let's face it, everyone loves a Thrawn novel. So for me, that would probably be the way to go with it. Fill in that blank that we didn't get. But it's one of those things again. Do we need to know, or is it? I know we do like to tie up those loose ends, though.
Definitely. And sort of after that, we get the assault of the Jedi onto the Night Sister castle. Kat, just talk us through your thoughts on the assault, how Thrawn reacts to what the Jedi are doing, and the chaos that ensues, and also you've already mentioned about the chilling aspect of the zombie troopers. But just talk us through all your favourite points from the beginning of the onslaught up until we have our heroes separate.
It's a very interesting beginning because Thrawn asks Morgan, have the troops realize what they're going into? And Thrawn has always been a very fair leader. Even though he's an Imperial, even though he's a Chiss, he's a very fair leader. He does try to minimize loss of life. And he knows that the troopers he sends out aren't coming back. And yet almost everybody has signed up for this mission, has given their duty and pledge to Thrawn. And I think it shows the amazing respect Thrawn's troops have for him, that they are willing to sacrifice themselves, the ultimate sacrifice, for Thrawn and his beliefs. It shows how much the troopers really believe in Thrawn. Compare this to like the troopers on the Death Star who don't care what Grand Moff Tarkin is doing. Compare this to even like the First Order Stormtroopers, the First Order officers. Much more sort of self-concerned rather than believing in an utmost cause. So I think that's very interesting that they show this utmost loyalty to Thrawn, and Thrawn knows Ahsoka was the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker. He knows Anakin's tactics. There's this moment where he says he knows there'll be no negotiating with Sabine, with Ahsoka, and he just sends out a massive wave of stormtroopers to take them on. And yeah, everything seems to be going to plan. And Ezra, Sabine, Ahsoka, it's an amazing fighting sequence with Ezra and Sabine deflecting the bolts back at stormtroopers, where Ahsoka's actually sending most of them to the ground. She doesn't want to necessarily deflect them back, I think. And then everything seems to be fine. Everything seems to be over. And the green glow in the lenses of the helmets was just so chilling, but also amazing. And those stormtroopers just rising up. Absolutely, I need to shout out now to all the stormtrooper performers, the actors and actresses, the stunt performers in those suits, because they're the ones who sold it. The body language completely changes once they become zombies, and everything about their movements, it becomes much more like a shuffle. There's less coordination, and there's this sense of just this oncoming mass of troopers, not mindless almost. They don't quite fall when they're stabbed or when a bolt is deflected at them, and the performance just absolutely sold it. I know there's a lot of fans of the Death Trooper novel, and a lot of fans have wanted zombie troopers in Star Wars, but I think there's also been a hesitation of, would it work or would it sort of break the canon? Death Troopers is now Legends after all, but it completely worked. And the way it was written worked, the way it was performed completely sold it. And with the troopers, just this horde of zombie troopers just shuffling continuously up those corridors, and Force users have got nothing. There's nothing they can do because they're not living beings anymore. You can tell they're scared. And if Force users are scared, well, that's the time to hightail it out of there.
Definitely. Jason, what were your thoughts on the Jedi assaulting the castle, and then obviously the horrors they would encounter once they got inside?
I absolutely love this because I think as a viewer, I think we all knew what was probably going to happen. And when, let's face it, Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka pretty easily dispatched most of those stormtroopers, and then, or night troopers, and then obviously they start to move away head on, and then it was like Kat said, the acting and the movement of those troopers as they came back to life, and you suddenly thought they're the Walking Dead. This is not a good thing, which obviously then lends itself to headshots and decapitations, sticking to the obvious only way of dispatching a good zombie. And it gave it like something different that you wouldn't normally expect from Star Wars. Um, and I found it really interesting, the way Thrawn, when he sent the troopers off, it was like they all know what they're going into. So these guys knew that they were inevitably going to die, but that was not going to be the end. So it was really quite a chilling sort of way that these loyal guys had done. But that's why Thrawn is the great tactician and the great leader of men or troops, because he is the one that earns the respect of his soldiers and also their loyalty, which is something that a lot of other leaders don't get, which is why they ultimately fail. And that, I think, is what makes Thrawn a very dangerous enemy to anyone, because he demands that loyalty. Um, he's got a far superior fighting machine to take against his enemies. So all in all, I just thought it was brilliant. It was something different that we've not had normally in Star Wars. Obviously, we have had a bit of it in the Legends sort of stuff, but to have it here on the screen and to be put into like the mainstream, I thought was brilliant. It just added that extra bit to an already great episode.
Do you feel that it's not just respect about his military aspect, but when I look at Thrawn, I also get the sense that there's a little bit like Charles Manson about him. Like it's very much like a cult. Like these people will die for you because there's very much a cult feeling going on. When he speaks to Morgan Elsbeth, and Morgan Elsbeth at the beginning, says, we'll do it for you because we love you type of thing. She doesn't use the word love, but the way she's looking at him, the way she's addressing him about her and the troopers, and they're willing to do anything for him, is because they'll do anything for him. And when he reminds them that it's for the Empire, he says, but he says that with almost a smirk on his face, and she almost looks at him as if to say, "No, you know this is because like we love you, not because we love the Empire, because we love you." I don't know if you think there's a little bit of a cult feeling going on here with what's going on with Thrawn and this Imperial remnant that are left.
Definitely.
I don't know what you think about that, Jason. Then we'll go to Kat as well. What you think about that as well?
Definitely, I agree with you there, and I think that was felt from the very introduction of Thrawn into this series. When he marched down through the columns of troops and they were all chanting "Thrawn, Thrawn, Thrawn." He demanded a different type of sort of lead. I don't know how you describe it even. But yeah, cult is about the nearest that you could do. These guys were willing to throw down their lives for him. And that's because Thrawn as a character is very enigmatic, which is what all cult leaders are like. So yeah, I think that's definitely the case, and it's a bit different to obviously the nearest character that's got the same sort of reaction is obviously the Emperor. So hence why Thrawn is the heir to the Empire.
Kat, what's your thoughts on the cult-like behaviours of Thrawn, I suppose, than the cultist type behaviour of these troops and Morgan?
I don't necessarily think that Thrawn would want to cultivate a cult leader kind of role for himself. He's almost quite reluctant in leadership roles, especially in the novels. But I do think his troops have sort of formed a cult around him. He's the only authority figure they've had for the last decade or so. And that respect for his authority, I think, could very easily develop into this cultist belief in Thrawn. Thrawn is the one promising basically to get them home. And that's a very powerful promise to be almost guaranteeing these troopers. And that would definitely sort of create this cult worship of Thrawn, because he is doing all that he can, not only for himself, but for his troops. So I think that is got to be why we see the night troopers so willing to sacrifice themselves, chanting Thrawn's name, because Thrawn has got this cult figure status for them. Not necessarily, I think, like I said, something that Thrawn would want for himself, but it's something he would accept. It's like, well, if my troops want to picture me in that way, they can. Because at the end of the day, it's another tactical role for Thrawn. Having that cultist belief from his troops only solidifies their loyalty further, only makes them more willing to sacrifice themselves for him and his cause. Whether or not he's as loyal to the Empire as he portrays himself to be is another question. Thrawn always maintained a front of doing things for the Empire, but a lot of what he did benefit either the ascendancy, or it certainly didn't harm the ascendancy. So I think with Thrawn, you'll see a motive on the outside. You'll see what he wants you to see, but there's always going to be secret motives behind every action he takes.
Definitely. I think going on sort of our next point, we'll go to you, Jason, with this one first. So, what were your thoughts on sort of Ezra getting aboard the Star Destroyer and able to do what Ezra does best and eventually hook up with Home One? And then what were your thoughts on sort of Sabine finally taking the advice of Hugh Yang, maybe saying, stick together? She helps Ezra get on the Star Destroyer, knows that he'll be all right there, and she turns around and comes back to assist her master in surviving this onslaught.
Yeah, for me, that straight away, she took the advice that Huang had given, and she realised that for her and for Ahsoka to survive, Ahsoka needed Sabine. And, this was where the Jedi and the Master, and also I think that's possibly what gave her the confidence as well, to actually get the Force to work with Ezra, was that she was in a place now where she was finding her place. She had the belief from Ezra as well as Ahsoka. He must. The only way that worked was he was willing to make the leap with the complete trust that Sabine was going to be there to carry on with the push. And I think that gave her that extra confidence. And I think then seeing Ahsoka, it was, I cannot walk away from my master. I've got to stay there. And that's where, Sabine really has maybe found her way to the Force.
Yeah, definitely. And then let's just sort of come to the end. We'll start with you, Kat. Sort of, what's your thoughts on sort of? Let's talk about the different endings that we got, because we sort of got like 3 endings in one, didn't we? So if we take the first ending, which is Thrawn is now in the known Star Wars galaxy, and they've headed straight to Dathomir, and it looks like they're ready to unload that cargo. What's your thoughts on what that cargo could be, and what on earth is going to happen on Dathomir, and what is Thrawn going to do next?
I love the cinematography of this particular part of the ending. That way, the Eye of Sion sort of eclipses Dathomir is really compelling as a shot. I also love the cinematography. Then we see inside the Chimera these rows and rows of caskets, cargo containers. What are they? That felt very much Indiana Jones and the Secret Warehouse. This is like the big question, isn't it? What is in those cargo containers, and why has Thrawn gone straight to Dathomir? Why didn't he link up with the rest of the Imperial fleet, who are sort of on the Outer Rim and the Unknown Regions? They need him. Captain Palion's having a panic attack about how much he can stall in the Shadow Council. Thrawn is coming, I promise. Thrawn is coming. So it makes me think that what's most likely in those caskets, I think the caskets, is the Night Sisters. I think maybe that they were either put in stasis or they're going to be reanimated through dark magic, and Thrawn is finalizing his deal with the Great Mothers. Thrawn always did keep to his word, so if he promised the Great Mothers that he would bring them home to Dathomir, that's why he's there. I don't know if now Thrawn will have an alliance with the Night Sisters. I mean, a zombie army and Night Sisters would kind of make him unstoppable. But I don't know if Thrawn would do that, or if he was going to rejoin with the rest of the Imperial fleet, because there's still this, like, one part we haven't come to in this era that hasn't been mentioned because I don't think it's been formalized, is after the war, Mon Mothma basically allows the Empire to exist within their own region of space. So they have an area of the galaxy bordering the Unknown Regions. That's Imperial. She leaves it as Imperial territory. So Mon Mothma signs some paperwork and agrees, you can still exist, but only in this part of the galaxy. None of that has been mentioned in the current timeline of The Mandalorian and Ahsoka, which makes me think it hasn't happened yet. Thrawn is the kind of threat that would make Mon Mothma sort of sign a negotiation between the Empire and the New Republic. So that could be, I think, where we're heading, and Thrawn will be the threat to the New Republic that will make them sign over a bit of the galaxy and come to that tentative peace.
Yeah, I wonder if, I assume that whatever's in those cargo boxes maybe has to get somewhere fast. You know, if it is got bodies in it, and maybe they need to, you either have a lifespan once you move them from where they were. So I think they're either Night Sisters or the dead Stormtroopers, which they're going to give them another army once to resurrect them, maybe, who knows. But also, these Great Mothers maybe haven't been this part of the galaxy before either, so it could be very interesting. Jason, what do you think? Obviously, I felt that Thrawn was quite... when he found out it was Ahsoka Tano and that she is Anakin Skywalker's apprentice, he was obviously quite worried about that threat. What do you think he's going to do when he finds out that there's a Luke Skywalker running around the galaxy who actually destroyed the Emperor?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think I don't know whether I've discussed it on here with you, but I've certainly discussed it with a few of my friends. I've got this big thing that I love the idea of us finding out more about what happened to Luke leading up to, obviously, before he turned his back on being a Jedi. And I'm still really, really rooting for. I'd love to see something centered around Luke, which would bring perfectly into this. And I'm still banging on the drum that I'd love to see Sebastian Stan play like middle. The only way I can describe it is like middle-aged Luke. And I'm perfectly happy. In this case, I am happy for a recasting, because obviously, I think at this moment in time, he could pull off, the role perfectly. It would sit fine with the look with Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill's actually said that he'd be happy for that to happen. And I think it would be a way of sort of giving Luke the journey so that maybe, I don't want to say that it'll sort out the faults with the sequels, but it would at least help possibly show how Luke could get to where he got to in those sequels. And a war with Thrawn as Luke's trying to rebuild the Jedi, and the whole heir to the Empire story. Obviously, there's issues with bits of that, because obviously you've got Carrie Fisher's obviously no longer about and wouldn't be able to play the younger Leia. So, and there is an issue because Carrie's no longer about, would you want to recast her? So there's lots of issues that could cause it not to happen, but it's a story I'd love to see told. And, as you say, yeah, Thrawn, when he found out who Ahsoka Tano was, there was definitely, but he made the mistake of sort of, he thought that she was going to be very much like her master, so he could read what she was going to do. And I don't think, Ahsoka, although obviously trained by Anakin, is a very different person to Anakin Skywalker. But yeah, it's something. There's so many routes that this story could go.
Yep, there definitely is. Another one of our endings, Jason, was Ezra on Home One, meeting up with Hera and Chopper. Obviously, where do you think this is going to go next, and what were your thoughts when you seen it happen?
I love this. One, straight away, it was like we'd gone full circle. Like you said earlier, that they used the same ship or the same style, whether it was the same ship or the same style of ship that Balin had turned up in. It was almost like the whole sequence again, but this time it was Hera that was going to meet this potential threat. I did have one issue because obviously when Ezra appeared as like the night trooper, straight away Hera's gun went up and she's got the security detail behind her. And I'm sorry, but if you're a security detail and you see a threat coming, you all got your guns up pretty quick. Whereas there was sort of almost a delay. So Hera's got her gun up, and then all of a sudden, it's almost 5-6 seconds later that he's like, oh, she's got hers up. And they all put theirs up almost at the same time. That just felt a little bit not realistic. And then, obviously, you see this trooper, and I think I worked out pretty quickly who it was, because basically Ezra's used his favourite trick, nick an armour and get me out of here. And then the way Chopper, which I think goes to show the relationship that Chopper and Ezra have always had, and Chopper sort of said straight away who this was. He moved forward, and for the first time, I didn't really understand his chattering because quite often in this season particularly, I've sort of known, because obviously it's well known that Dave Filoni provides the vocals that are then turned into the chatter for Chopper. And for example, when Chopper was deploying the tracker in a few middle of the season, I sort of could almost hear Filoni's voice, but this time I couldn't really hear or get an idea of what he was saying to Ezra. But I absolutely loved it, and obviously when the helmet comes off and you hear Hera say Ezra, and I love it. Was one of those things. There's been a criticism in the past of, like, for example, when Mayfield swore, and it was like, yeah, bringing in slang and all this sort of thing. But to hear Ezra say, "Hi, Hera," and it sounded like the voice from Rebels. It was Ezra through and through. And it's sort of seeing him back with Hera, who, to all intents and purposes, had become his adopted mother. I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes, and obviously, what sort of effect Ezra could have on Jason Sindula.
Definitely. Cat, obviously, the third ending is sort of two endings together. If you want to, what happens to the people we first met, which is Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati. Shin, instead of joining up with Thrawn or trying to follow our master, although our master said go with Thrawn, she decides to go with the people who maybe match her the most right now. So she seeks out those bandits on the planet Peridia. It looks like she's going to join them, maybe some sort of leader. Maybe turn over a new leaf working with them. And then obviously Baylan is on the statues of the Mortis gods. It looks like that's what he's been after all along. We see, again, I get the name wrong. I don't know if it's Morai or Morag, but the bird of the sister is there. So I think it's definitely Mortis god related. So what's your thoughts on what Baylan's after and what could come? And obviously, is Ahsoka being put on this planet to stop him? And what do we think of Shin's choice to join with the bandits rather than go back to Thrawn?
This was such an incredible shot with Baylan standing on the arm of the father, outstretched, pointing towards something. And not what I was expecting. I thought Baylan would find like a space dragon of wisdom or like the Bendu. But it felt like Baylan's journey was almost just like beginning. He'd found this guide marker to point him in the right direction, because if you follow the path of the father's hand, it looks like he's pointing to something, a particular mountain in the distance, and there's something glinting. So that must be Baylan's eventual destination, and he's got a very long journey to get there. It was a beautifully cinematic moment. You have the father, the son, the daughter has been damaged. Now, there's two ways to interpret this. That could mean simply that the statues have been there for a very long time and they've just been corroded by the natural elements, or that the balance on this planet is unbalanced. So the father always represented balance, but the only way he could do that was through the daughter and through the son. With the daughter's statue damaged, that leaves only the son, who connected to the dark side, makes me think Peridia is unbalanced.
So
perhaps that's from the Night Sisters' influence.
I think with the statues, the statues, obviously it's damaged, but it's only damaged in one area. Like, she's completely gone. So I think it's one of two things: either what you said there, because of the darkness linked with the Night Sisters, like they destroyed it to not have that there, or I think when the sister has given her life in her essence to save Ahsoka in the Mortis arc, I think that's then led to her being eroded off that cliff.
Maybe. I mean, that would also make sense. Ties into that mythos of the Mortis arc, which is one of the craziest arcs in the Clone Wars, if not in all of Star Wars. But it's so interesting, and the possibilities it leaves for Balin's journey and discovery or it almost seem endless. It's obviously very tragic that Ray Stevenson sadly has not got to see the outpouring of love his character has received throughout this story. His acting has been incredible in every episode. The gravitas, the mystery he's brought to Balin's Skull. And part of me hopes that they actually won't recast the character and maybe Balin just doesn't make his journey. Maybe Shin picks it up when she perhaps feels her master's passing. But either I would like to see it continued in the books, but I don't think I want to see it recast because that ending where he's standing on the hand of the father, it feels like a really good ending that honors Ray Stevenson's role as Balin. But we will see what the writers do.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm the opposite of you two guys, and I just feel like I don't think it disgraces him, that he's tragically passed away, and it is very tragic, and and he's been absolutely fantastic in this series. But I think by let's let somebody else, they'll go through the casting and they'll pick the right person to take back on the role, and finish the. I imagine Dave Filoni's got this character's journey planned out, so I think it would be a disservice to Ray's work so far and to Dave's work to sort of not finish the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually, although like I've said, I don't want him recast. I see exactly where you're coming from, Pete, and that's why I'm sort of torn in how I want to see it go. Like you say, the character of Balon Skull has been created by two people. One has been the fantastic acting by Ray. And two has been the brilliant writing by Dave Filoni. And Dave Filoni's created this character that I hate it when they refer to him as a villain, because to me, Balon Skull's not a villain. He is on a different path that's not necessarily on the right side, but I think he genuinely has a good reason for why he's taking the journey that he's got. This guy's been through a lot of stuff that none of us can really comprehend where it's come from. And I think that is where Ray's done a brilliant job. It would, if they can find the right actor and they can carry on this story, then I think it would be great. The way it's been shot and filmed, it felt like it felt like Balin had come to the end of his journey just with that image to me. Although at the same time, as I've said, it could be that he was just looking and he was closer to where he wanted to be. But I think it's going to be a hard decision for them. And as I said, they have got the choice of allowing it to have been just Ray and then do Balin and Shin's story in the novelizations or comic books, because the one thing I would say is, to me, their journey or their relationship with Ahsoka and with Sabine and even with Ezra, it sort of reached a conclusion that, although not completely satisfactory, it doesn't have to be revisited.
See,
I'm because they're such great characters.
I get the Ezra, but I think Sabine and Ahsoka are stuck here, and they've used the symbolism of the bird, the sister's bird, which ties in, which is part of the Mortis story. He's on the Mortis statues. That's what they're saying at the end here. They're saying actually the power he's after that we thought wasn't real. It's actually the Mortises. That's the big cliffhanger. And I feel if we don't do that, then don't write about Ahsoka or Sabine ever again, because that is actually what they're on that planet for. And that's why Anakin's there watching them as well, because he's there to keep an eye on it as well, because it's important.
All right, yeah.
I just feel like you either move forward the story or you kill it. But if you start to change it here, it's where it's going to get really, really muggy. For Ahsoka and Sabine just turn up and be like, oh yeah, we dealt with that problem with the motor squads. It's all good now, guys. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like you've just spent a lot of time. You spent this whole series setting it up, really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get where you're coming from. As I say, I don't know what the answer is, and in the long run, it's going to be Filoni, Favreau, and the powers to be at Lucasfilm that'll come up with the solution.
Yeah.
I hope they do it justice.
Do you think a recast would be disrespectful? Is that why you don't like?
No, I don't think it's disrespectful, because it's no one's fault what happened with Ray. And the story. I think even him as an actor would want the story to carry on. But I don't know. I just feel they don't necessarily have to recast. But I hope they don't use that as an excuse, because obviously, we've heard them say, "Oh, we don't want to go down recast," because this is a completely different situation. Tragically, they lost the actor, and to be fair, recasts have worked in the past. I'm trying to remember the film that Heath Ledger
to
was
be
doing.
fair,
That they had.
Ahsoka herself's a recast, Ezra's a recast, Hera's a recast. If we really want to get down to it, like it's three big parts of the show.
I don't.
Recasts.
Yeah, I don't see those ones as recasts.
But it's like, but Thrawn's not a recast. Do you know what I mean? Bo-Katan's not a recast. So when you look at it that way,
yeah,
they've put themselves in that situation. I think with that, looking at it that way, maybe I think.
Yeah, it is. In the long run, it's like I say, we can sit here going over and over it. But what the sad thing is, we're going to have to wait now till the actors' strike is over to even get an inkling of what's going on.
Definitely.
I would say we're looking at 2025, 2026 before we even get any idea of what it's going to be. Obviously, next year, I think they've already got pretty planned out. Obviously, Favreau had already said that Mando season 4 is written. It just needs to be filmed. And obviously that's going to tie into what we've seen here. So, yeah, they're going to have a plan in place, but obviously, where they go, and also with the way the industry's changing, because I think we're going to see the effects of this strike for many, many years to come now. And also the effects on the way they work is going to be felt for a long time.
If you think of the strike, you've got Ahsoka's just finished, but like The Mandalorian would probably be definitely already in production by now, but it's not.
Yeah.
So, Mandalorian could have, down the line, Mandalorian will get started and finished way later than it should have been, which means Dave and John Favreau, they'll move on to the next stuff later. So it's going to have a counter effect on everything next. So, if Dave Filoni was going to do an Ahsoka Series 2, which was just going to be based on Peridea, on Ahsoka, Sabine, Shin, and Baylan, and then also do the Hate the Empire stuff, now that's going to be even more delayed because both can't progress at the current time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be quite tricky. Kat, what's your thoughts on sort of what would be next? Like, do you think we were getting Ahsoka season 2, which would tell the story of Ahsoka and Sabine? And then do you think we would get the Heir to the Empire movie after Mandalorian season 4, which would tell the story of Thrawn in the new galaxy, in our current Star Wars galaxy? And obviously, if that is the case, Dave Filoni's very influential in both of those.
Yeah, I think there's got to be an Ahsoka season 2 because there is no other way to continue Ahsoka and Sabine's journey otherwise. Mandalorian season 4, I suspect, might even pick up a little bit on the New Republic story with Hera, Mon Mothma, Ezra. I think there's room there for those characters to cameo. I think Dave Filoni's film would make sense to have Thrawn as the villain. It would also provide the budget necessary for some kind of final galactic conflict. I don't know if he's shaping up for. Is he shaping up for the Battle of Jakku? I'm trying to remember when the Battle of Jakku happens in the timeline.
That should have already happened. I think is that 2 years after?
Right. Okay. So if that's already happened, okay. So maybe one final conflict between the New Republic and the part of the Empire led by Thrawn, which is how we get the Imperials then sort of chased off to the edge of the unknown regions. But the only way for Ahsoka's story to progress is through her own series. She needs to be the focus alongside Sabine and Baylan and Shin on Peridia. So I think you've got 3 strands there that need to happen separately and then maybe intertwine at a later date.
Definitely. I think regardless of where you land, I think the future is very bright, and I think the story of this season's been fantastic. I think the hope it's left for future stories, it's sort of left Star Wars in a position where we've got a lot of avenues to go down, which is fantastic. Obviously, it is just a shame about the writer strike that's now finished, and now obviously the actor strike, which might delay us getting our juicy hands on juicy story.
Well, I'd rather have the actors and the writers have fair wages before seeing any new content. 100%. So I'm glad the writers have come to a fair deal, and I wish the actors union as much luck as they can have to get that fair deal as well.
I think they will. I think it'll be a while, mind, but I think, because they've caved and given it to the writers, and like the rightly should, it hasn't really cost that much to give the writers what they deserve. I think they will meet with the actors and that will get done, but it's just a case of how long the handful of executives at the top want to drag this out for, because like I said, the longer it drags out doesn't hurt them exactly, but it hurts the people underneath them the most. If it was the other way around, this would have been sorted out straight away, but that's the way it is. But it is what it is. It means we're going to get Star Wars a bit later, which is a bit not sad, but like I said, when we've been eating delicious steaks and it's so good and it makes us hungry for more, is what I'm getting at. And we're gonna have to wait a little bit now for the next juicy steak to come our way. Kat, any closing thoughts on the Ahsoka series and this episode?
I think the Ahsoka series has just been an absolute triumph from start to finish. Dave Filoni's best writing to date, dare I say. And I think it's focused on beloved characters that we know and have seen previously. It's continued their stories, their character arcs in a way that works, it's justified, and it's brought in new characters who feel like they've always been part of the Star Wars mythos. Everything has worked, even some of the crazy stuff like the zombie Death Troopers. And yeah, it's just, I've loved it. Like I said, my parents have loved it, even though they haven't seen the Clone Wars and Rebels. And I hope that people who have just perhaps come in to watch Ahsoka do go back and watch the Clone Wars and Rebels to get that even deeper understanding of this series. But Ahsoka has been, it's either on par or it may even be Andor for me.
Ooh, very good praise. Very good praise over here. Jace, what is your sort of final thoughts on the episode and the season as a whole?
Yeah, it's just left me wanting more. As Kat said, Filoni has excelled himself here. And I think it just goes to show how much he respects the history of Star Wars, but also is willing to create new things for everyone. And he is just brilliant at it. The character, as I said already, the character of Balon Skull that he's created is a far more. He's not your straightforward good bad guy. It's just been brilliant, and it's Filoni's skill in creating that's really made this series. I just look forward to seeing where they're going. It's going to be hard to be patient, but we're going to have to be. I just think they've done a brilliant job. And I think they should all hold their heads high, in what they've achieved. And there's going to be people, as there always is in the Star Wars community, that are going to have issues with bits, but in the long run, you've got to respect that these guys have been given the job of creating this story, and I think they've done us proud and created a story that has been brilliant and done justice to the characters that we already love.
Definitely. And we will wrap it up there. Jason, where can the people find you on social media?
At Hondoling.
And Kat, where can the people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at CatKyla, where I'm always happy to talk Star Wars and anything Kylo Ren.
And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter or X at Jolly Jedi Pete. You can find the podcast on Twitter or X at Wars Star. You can also find the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Star Wars Podcast. If you're listening on Apple Music, so Apple Podcast, I suppose it's called now, or on Spotify, please leave us a top review. Makes us three smile quite a lot. Only takes you a second, but makes us smile for hours, and it helps people find the show. Thank you very much for listening. May the force be with you all. And remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.
Hello, Star Wars listeners. This is Savannah Odit. You might know me as host of The Dorky Diva Show with my co-host Brian Balance. I am also producer of The Adventures of the Zolan Dart, which is a Star Wars-inspired audio drama that we produced over the last year. If you love stories about smugglers, courage, heroic characters, and maybe a few foes along the way, you should go to thedorkydivashow.com and listen to The Adventures of the Zolan Dart today.
Shout! We've got your pigs.
Were any of the critters harmed?
What did you do now?
I didn't do anything. I just freaked out for no reason.
It was nice doing business with you again. Maybe next time we could deliver something less temperamental.
Now, what you call temperamental, I call fun.
Hey, is there a place nearby where I can make some repairs?
3 clicks south of here, you'll find a small spaceport. They should have what you need, as long as it's nothing too big.
Dynamic class? My stars, you don't hear about many of those still being space-worthy.
It's been in my family for a while.
She's pretty great. Any chance you have a hover cart we can use to load up?
I'll check out the HoloNet to see if anything new has come up in the sector.
My name is Sereth Khan. I am the chief here on Kamai. My people and I have been experiencing food shortages as of late due to unforeseen natural occurrences. We are looking to hire someone.
I say we take this one. The pay is great, and it's the type of job we're familiar with.
Welcome. You must be Captain Otoa. I've already sent word to Pac 2 to expect you in the next cycle or so.
You told him we were coming before we even accepted the job. That's rather presumptuous, isn't it?
Perhaps, though once I received confirmation that you were interested and on your way here, I couldn't help but hope.
Fair enough. Well, we'll be back as soon as we can.
Well, that's not good.
Is that blaster fire I hear?
So you're the one.
Captain, it sounds like they want to do this the hard way.
I love when they got some fight in them.
This is bad. This is bad.
We're about to have a lot of company.
I'll see you soon.